This video is about fundamentals of organic chemistry. So the question asks us to name the following compound, these two underneath, using the IUPAC convention. And the concept of this question is naming compounds using IUPAC convention. So the first step is to determine the longest carbon chain and its type, like the type of the organic compound. So here we have an example organic compound. So we need to determine the longest carbon chain, which is the 3 carbon right here. So the 3 carbon tells us that the prefix of the name is prop, so P-R-O-P, and we also need to determine the type of this compound. And so the type, we can see that it's all single bonds, and so it's an alkane, so we can complete that name to propane. So we have sort of the first portion of the name, so we should write that in the corner, which is propane, and we can move on to the second step. Second step is to determine the functional group and its position. So the functional group in this organic compound is the OH, indicated in the color red. And the OH tells us that it's an alcohol. So the suffix will end with ol, so like OL. And we will actually need to change the suffix of propane to propanol. So moving on, we need to determine its position as well. Let's actually indicate that in green. And its position on the second carbon. So we can alter this name, and we would have something like propertol. The third step is to determine the substituent group and its position. So the substituent group in this organic compound is the chlorine, Cl right here. And chlorine will have the prefix of chloro in the name, and then we need to determine its position as well. So its position on the first carbon. So in the name, we should add to the name 1 chloro, and then we have the final name of this organic compound. So going back to the question, I've written out a summary of the steps mentioned earlier, and the first step is to determine the longest carbon chain and the type. So in the first question, we need to remember at the end of each line, it's representative of a carbon. So in the first question, there's 3 carbon and 1 double bond. And because there is a double bond, we also need to specify its location. And so it's located on the second carbon. So the name is prop2ene. In the second question, there is 3 carbon and they're all single bonds. So the name is propane. In the third question, the longest carbon chain are the 3 carbon right here and the all single bonds. So the name is also propane. The second step is to determine the functional group and the position. So in the first question, the functional group is indicated in red, and that is an aldehyde group with the suffix of al. So we're going to change the name with that suffix. Second question, the functional group is the double bond to O, and it's a ketone with the suffix of 1. And we also need to determine the position. It's on the second carbon, so we simply need to put propane 2,1. And lastly, in the third question, the functional group is the double bond to O and the bond to O with a substituting group, and that is an ester with the suffix of O8, and we're going to change the name with that suffix as well. The third step is to determine the substituting groups and its position. So in the first question, there is no substituent group, so this is the final name. And then the second question, there's no substituent group as well, so this is also the final answer. So in the third question, there are multiple substituent groups. So the first one is the one attached to the longest carbon chain, which will come nearest to the name. So we're going to add that one first, and that is a methyl group, which is located on the second carbon. So the name is 2-methyl propanoate. So the other substituent group is attached to the oxygen, which is an ethyl group, and there's another substituent of the chlorine attached to the second carbon on that ethyl group. And so in front of our name, we need to write 2-chloroethyl. And our final answer is 2-chloroethyl 2-methyl propanoate.